Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
Oh God, he's feisty. He's feisty.
Oh, I am.
Today.
Oh, we're Aggie. I like it.
Yeah, you've come in with a real you're so energetic from life, and I've just finished work and have literally power walked from the station back here, threw on the microphone, and was like, "Let's go." So we've got two very different energies, and yours is a lot more chaotic than mine, but it's good. It's good.
I like it. I'm frisky, as I feel like you might be a little bit. But you want to be on the back burner, right? Whereas I'm like, fucking turn the nitrous on. Let's go turbo style. Let's go fast and furious.
And we're recording 2 episodes back to back. We're stockpiling.
Well, sometimes recording. I think it's necessary, right? Like, I mean, Christmas time, I think we've been doing this long enough that people know that when it comes to hospitality, Christmas time sucks. Yeah. And I've been behind the curtain. I've been managing 3 venues in as many weeks, which is a lot when you're a senior manager. I've settled into a new place, but we're just kind of going into Christmas period, so I feel like time's going to be really tough to find. Loads of life stuff kind of being demanding as well. There's been an obvious decline in our in how consistent. Yeah, exactly. Which everyone should. I mean, you bastards, you better understand how difficult it is keeping life up. Yeah, I'll call you out on it.
Twitter's closing down. Okay, we're mourning Twitter.
Oh my God, how good will that be for the community at large? Jesus Christ, Reddit's bad enough. Could you imagine how much better the community will be when Twitter's got? I mean, I say that's harsh because there's a lot of people that have a really good positive presence on Twitter, and I feel like they represent a really good aspect of the community. I just feel like it gets diluted by the general 80% schluck that is Twitter, and unfortunately we aren't separate from general public consensus of things and how media is interpreted and reflected upon and expressed in opinions. And I feel like Twitter just can sometimes have such a Republican versus conservative point of view of where you have to be all or nothing, Whereas
Democrat versus conservative.
That's it. What did I say?
You said Republican. Who are the American conservatives?
Good, great, good. See, that's my understanding of things. Either way, you either say all or nothing, and I feel like that's kind of a bad stance to take on anything. I feel like don't create extremes. You want to kind of sit on a nice middle ground, at least have a point of conversation that's somewhat mediated. And I feel like current politics dictate that in terms of media, in terms of personal expression, blah 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 blah. So maybe Elon Musk did the right thing by trying to buy Twitter out and then failing in doing so. Who knows? We'll find out in the foreseeable future.
I don't know if the right thing is the way I'd phrase that. He definitely did a thing.
He did a thing, yeah, for sure.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
Anyway, Magic!
Magic the Gathering, right? We are continuing on with our story reviews of the Brothers War story arc. We don't usually do the side stories all as one big thing like we do our main stories. Because this week we're doing the side stories, or episodes as they're called. Because they have to do it for the tabs on the website. I don't really consider these to be main stories or side stories. It's the chapters.
No, these are chapters, which is silly. I don't know.
Yeah, well, these ones are episodes, I think. And the past ones were chapters, right? That's how they kind of...
I don't know. This one's chapter 1 Stronghold. I feel like these are the chapters, and the episodes were the other ones.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
See, this is the thing. It shouldn't be so confusing. Why should there be chapters and episodes?
It's not confusing. I'm just an idiot. Anyway, Jesus Christ. 2 different energies. We're doing the past ones, written by Reinhardt. Oh, I'm immediately going to mess up the name. Sorry. Reinhardt Suarez. Whereas the last lot were written by Miguel Lopez. And we're going to go talk about the present stories, which are pretty cool. I'm just going to do this is genuinely an incredibly quick rundown of the different chapters, because I don't want to take 10 minutes. So I'm just going to fly through it and then we'll discuss it all. Just a little word on Reinhardt Suarez. They are not a brand new Magic author. They have done previous stories in both Strixhaven and in, what would it be, in Crimson Vow with Survivors. So yeah, they are now like a sort of, mainstay of Magic story. Got given a whole arc for this side story bit. And instead of the past, with albeit with Teferi being there, and it technically being in the present, in the same way like the Assassin's Creed games are actually in the present, but you're in the past. Like Teferi's in the Animus, and he's gone back in time.
Sure, yeah, I like that. That's a good
Do you know what
analogy.
I mean? The Vorthos cast recently did a Beyond the Multiverse episode about Assassin's Creed, and I played all the initial Desmond Miles Assassin's Creed games, so I've got it sort of it's in my brain.
The whole Adam and Eve thing, really cool.
Yeah, all that bollocks. This is actually in the present and does focus mostly on the present, with the usual smattering which Magic does, where you dive into like one character's kind of backstory a little bit, but it's very much framed in the present. So here we go. Go blitz through, quick can. We have chapter 1, which is called Stronghold. Chapter 1 sees Teferi, Kaya, Saheeli, Joda, and Ren begin to work on the temporal anchor and try to convince a grief-stricken Elsbeth to join the fight upon learning of Ajani's completion. Vivian Reed is also knocking around, and she arrives to give news about Tezzeret and Urabrax's dissension on Phyrexia, or against Phyrexia. We then move swiftly on to Chapter 2, Antiquities, where Saheeli continues to try and fail to build the temporal anchor, and we see into her past on Kaladesh, which is something we've never really dived into too much. Specifically, an instant in which she and Gonti have an interaction. Gonti, the Lord of Luxury, and the Etherborn, that's what they're called, isn't it? The Etherborn criminal kingpin kidnaps Saheeli because his mechanical heart is starting to fail. They blackmail her into fixing the heart, and we also have a look into how Saheeli, who is just a source of joy and beauty in her entire personage, kind of gets a different perspective of morality, and kind of finds her way through the whole situation. She uses the knowledge of when she fixed the heart to basically get the temporal anchor working. And meanwhile, Joda discovers a pocket dimension inside Urza's Starfield Orb, which may also hold the secrets to winning the Phyrexian War. The Starfield Orb, I went back and looked it up in the 2018 Dominaria stories, and it is the same orb that Teferi gets when in his kind of story, because he wasn't the main focus of those stories.
No,
it's the one where we are reintroduced to Teferi, and he's in that kind of escape room puzzle box temple.
Yeah, he does
Urza's
like
built
a
for him.
Indiana Jones kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's very easy to forget. This is something we said about like the Ren, the Tangled episode, where we're like, there are definitely clearly episodes of where they drop them in the side stories that you could very easily miss that have like actual relevance to the modern story. Like I guess Moon Silver Key probably has maybe less relevance now than that thing might do in the future, but it was really interesting to say like, oh, this wasn't just a random thing. They had a whole episode that you could have forgotten about, and if you go and reread it, it's a really cool little bit of fiction, and it's a really nice progression of him and his interaction with Urza like years on, especially now if we talk about it in concert with how Teferi interacted with Urza at the end of the episodes. It's kind of interesting to see how Urza and Teferi keep having these like tutor versus student interactions even years after Urza's death and Teferi's like progression past being a student of his. So yeah, it's kind of nice to see this like the dead isn't the past isn't really dead. The past is still very much affecting the now, the future, and the past again through wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff.
Yeah, which is a big theme in both of the chapters and the episodes. So yeah, that Starfield Orb, which is the MacGuffin in that little episode from 2018, turns out to be a pocket dimension meant for Teferi from Urza that has a bunch of constructs or like memories of different people from Urza's life, like Mishra and I think, is it Kayla's there, Bin Krug, or is it?
I think it was. Was it not? The sleeper agent. Wasn't the sleeper agent that was in there?
Zansha.
Yeah,
yes. So anyways,
in there,
it's a little pocket dimension that we don't quite know the significance of yet, but it's nice to see the Starfield Orb coming back. Chapter 3 focuses on Tezzeret and Phyrexia. We get a completely different sort of viewpoint, and we are privy to Khan's holy dissection by all of the priests on Elish Norn's new Phyrexia. And we see Tezzeret basically get really fucking tired of dealing with the Phyrexians. He was promised a dark steel body, as opposed to his current Ethereum one, which is currently being rotted away.
Which would be cool as shit, right?
Yep, he ain't
Imagine
gonna get it.
Tezzeret having it. Yeah, he's not getting it. Of course, he's
Not
not getting it.
Tezzeret
He's never got
realizes
anything he
he's not going to
wanted.
get it, and we have a little interaction with Elish Norn, basically sort of treating Tezzeret like the lapdog that Bolas always did, and the Infinite Consortium and all these kinds of people. Tezzeret's always been the lapdog, despite being insanely powerful himself. And we basically see the real fruition of Tezzeret's sort of rebellion against the Phyrexians. We also see a lot of interaction between Elish Norn and Khan, because Elish Norn kind of considers Khan like a partner and a father at the same sort of time. Like, she's the mother of machines, he's the father of machines, and she treats him as like this kind of holy being. So Khan's going to get all spooky again, I think, but maybe in a slightly different way to last time. And we also see an allusion to some elite quote unquote soldiers created by Rona, who's back for Elish Norn. So there's definitely going to be some sort of Imperial Guard motherfuckers turning up that are like Elish Norn's like royal guards or some shit. Imperial, royal, can I use those both at the same time? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chapter 4, we have some more Planeswalkers joining the Urza's Tower, which is where they're all held up for this kind of what I've dubbed like the Gatewatch Plus kind of thing. Chandra's now there, and she starts to grieve about Jaya Ballard's death and confides in Joda, who is also going through the same process, but their grief manifests in them getting really drunk together and celebrating the life of Jaya, which is a really cool, nice development. Really loved. I'm not going to focus on it too much later, so I'll say now, I really love Chandra in these stories. I'm not a big Chandra fan, and I think that's pretty obvious. But in these ones, I thought they got her character right. Like, this is the kind of Chandra I would want to see, right? They also start to draw out Elspeth out of her own grief over her many fallen comrades, because not only has she lost Ajani, she's also lost Daxos, and she's lost Venser. Venser's actually the one that they focus on a little bit, but it kind of gets all brought out. And this is overtaken. This chapter 4 is the biggest one. This is like got the most sort of like beat for beat things going on. As they're having this kind of grief-stricken celebration, a Phyrexian attack happens towards the Urza's Tower. This is going to lead to Elspeth and Joda leading the defense with a bunch of constructs that Saheeli's made from a bunch of plans found in Urza's Tower. Joda uses Elspeth's kind of light magic, if you like, or faith magic, to trigger a spell that he has possessed from Jaya, as he claims that fire and light magic are kind of very closely linked. This explosion of magical energy destroys half the army sent to defeat them, but this turns out to just be a distraction, because Rona, with another force, is attacking the tower directly, as opposed to out in the fields in front of the tower. Rona mortally wounds Joda at the end of this battle. Elspeth defeats Rona, doesn't kill her, and then Tezzeret comes up to mop up the sort of aftermath. Elspeth's trying to get the halo from her halo sword that she found on New Capenna, or was gifted on New Capenna, to try and heal Joda, and Tezzeret basically whisks Rona away to sort of keep his cover while still not, really wanting to save Rona at all. This story, interestingly, is intercut with sort of maybe like 200 to 300 word paragraphs of dream-like musings, I'm going to say, on different characters across the multiverse. People like Calix gets like a little weird interjection about like the nature of Calix as a planeswalker. Like, for people who don't remember who Calix is, it was oh my god, what's the name of the god I used to play on Arena? Klothys, thank you. It's Klothys's sort of demigod champion that then had a planeswalker spark and is eternally destined to follow Elspeth. We don't want to get into it. It's weird.
No, it's complicated and we don't like it. It ruins the whole continuity.
These little dreamlike sequences at the very end we get are the words of Ashiok, who basically thanks Elspeth for frightening Elish Norn so much that it's given Ashiok like a new lease of like, oh, I want to toy with this Phyrexian.
Yeah, his little love letters were delightful, weren't they?
Yeah,
like,
really cool.
Out of nowhere, unnecessary, but love seeing more Ashiok. Fantastic.
Yeah, like just why not? Like, yeah. Anyway, I'll get into it. I've got a real love for what they've done with these stories in terms of the Planeswalkers. Magic, exactly, magic. Chapter 5, which is the last one, we see the tower battle. So whilst the field battle is going on, the tower battle is now getting a fresh perspective from none other than Nissa. Nissa Ravines joined the tower crew. And after arguing with Chandra about the morality of violence and war, immediately jumps into battle with Ren, which is a cool little team up. Ren and Nissa, match made in heaven. Nissa struggles to communicate with Gaia, who is all it is the world soul of Dominaria, or are they separate?
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
it
no,
is, right?
they are. They are. Yeah.
Okay. Nissa initially struggles to communicate with Gaia because the land's been so polluted, and it was almost like Dominaria doesn't really want to give in to Nissa's power. Eventually, she gets over that, and with the help of more constructs and elementals, pushes back the Phyrexian assault. However, the assault does leave the tower and the temporal anchor pretty much completely destroyed, with Teferi still inside the coffin, which is kind of his container within the temporal anchor, and they don't quite know how to get Teferi out. The story ends with Teferi still kind of being trapped within the magic of the anchor, with the anchor destroyed. It's kind of a big deal. Jace then arrives, fucking Jace, and basically is with other planeswalkers, Vraska, the Wanderer, Kaito, Tyvar, sexy Tyvar. I've got such a huge crush on Tyvar. Like,
everyone in the multiverse has a giant crush on his shirtless bod.
He gets a mention
a little bit
earlier
crazy.
on, and they're like, "Does he not know how to put on a shirt?"
Twice. I think it's mentioned twice. It's like, dude, don't put him in a pocket.
Don't force him. Don't put him in a shirt. I'll rip it off with my goddamn teeth.
Delightful.
I fucking love it. He's great. And maybe less sexy, or sexy in a very different, toxic way. Luca is also there.
Yeah, Kaito's is there as well, right? Because that was the thing. Wanderer and Kaito are put together, which there are some question marks that will come. I'm sure we'll come to when we just talk about this when we get to episode 5. There are some question marks, but
yeah. Jace is there basically to confirm that the multi-plane defense plan that they've all been sort of mentioning is basically set in motion. There's also been loads of allusions to the Mirrans on New Phyrexia are planning a revolution, which is good hope for us getting another Koth, which is cool.
Yeah, by the way, Koth's alive, confirmed.
Oh yeah, he's definitely
out
alive,
of nowhere.
So well, it's not
great, good.
It's been built up for years. Let's be fair.
It has, but the lack of confirmation. Anyway, finish the blurb.
I'm so close. This was meant to be less than 10 minutes. The Gatewatch Plus disband to all their planes of interest. Most of them, it's their home planes, but not all of them. We then get an epilogue after that story kind of finishes. Like, boom, that's it now. And then we have the very traditional Magic story cliffhanger epilogue, which they love to do, and I think is also a great tooling device. It shows Teferi, who is no longer sort of a time ghost. He's fully corporeal, so not the same sort of thing as when he was in the past stories. He's awoken on a beach, on an unknown location, far away from either the Brothers' War or the present events in Urza's tower. And I've seen a few theories, but they leave it real ambiguous. To my mind, it's completely ambiguous as to where he is. Yeah.
They give no real direct hint. We just do all this assumption based on the fact that we have this expectation in our minds, which I'm sure again we'll have a little discussion on a little bit later. But
so yeah, you asked me just before we started the actual podcast what I thought about these stories, and I'm gonna say I think this is off the top. This is some of the best writing that Magic has in a kind of micro way and a macro way, but it also has an example of what I think is the worst of Magic's offering in Magic story. And it's not like that this is the worst line that they've done, but it's an example of why I think Magic isn't taken seriously narrative-wise. But it's also, broadly speaking, indicative of some of the best that Magic has to offer. And that's going to be a real tricky balance for me in this conversation.
I agree with you, I feel like on a grand scale, they've done really well across both chapters and episodes to convey a time that we weren't presently aware of, that gave it some backdrop without having to conform to so those that already knew about the Brothers, we talked about this last episode, right? I mean, it might have been a while ago for us in real time, but for everyone else, it was last episode. We talked about how they did justice to the Brothers' War as a retrospective story arc, because they didn't just do an homage to it, but they built up beyond what the set kind of gave. If anything, Antiquities didn't represent the Brothers' War as well as a modern Magic story set can, because back then they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They just chucked everything out there. They thought it threw the spaghetti on the wall, and some of it stuck, and it was there's nothing bad in terms of Antiquities isn't treated as a set that was poor. But in terms of story relevance and expression and stuff, outside of the set, if you didn't read the big ass books, you had no idea what was going on. The set didn't really convey that very well. And Brothers War as a set, as we'll get into next episode when we talk about our flavor picks, I feel like does a much better job of conveying that timeline than the original set did. And as a story arc, the little vignettes that we get of individual stories across that history, several, about 100 years, say, of the Brothers' War, they did a really good job of it. And then these five fuck, I've just got to the top because I forgot as well. Chapters. Yeah, these 5 chapters. Yeah, fucking, I forgot as well. It's terrible. These 5 chapters do a really good job of being like, yeah, that's happening, but also we need to keep the modern story going up until a point, and then at some point it just feels like they went, all right, we already did it. We did it well for a little bit. We can just chuck it out the window now. It doesn't matter anymore. And I don't know if that's the perspective you take, and that's where you undercut it. But I undercut it in the same fashion. It just got to a certain point. I was like, this is great. This is great. This is great. Oh, I guess we're back in War of the Spark again. Great, amazing. Fucking
no, see, I really disagree. Honestly, I think it's interesting that's your takeaway, because I like you actually was directly comparing this to War of the Spark, and in the same breath comparing it to Dominaria United, because like we said for the Dominaria United story, it felt like it was a War of the Spark level event, but again slightly fell short because it was trying to do all the things all at once, right?
Yeah, so the gravity didn't land.
Yeah, it just didn't land. There was too many characters. There was too much stuff. It was too much like, hey, remember all these guys? They're cool. And you're like, yeah, I really want to
remember Rada. Oh, she's here.
Yeah. But it's like, I don't want to have to also have to shove this truck of a narrative up a hill while saying hello to all my friends like on the way. We've got to do one thing or the other. So there, that's maybe a weird narrative. But whereas with this one, I sincerely felt the way that they, like the Ashiok vignettes, or Chandra and Nissa are there, but they're not, like, they have a paragraph where they snip and snipe at each other and then they kind of get on with it. Like the fact that they just drop in like, oh hey, here are these other Planeswalkers, they're here for a reason, they're not the focus, but we know because of previous stories what they're about, like the Wanderer and Kaito and even Luca. I mean, he was in the Strixhaven story and then he's kind of here, so it's like, okay, cool, these people are fresh in our minds. But because they all have a purpose to be there, not just to be like, hey, check me out, I'm doing a thing, and then pissing off again. Very much. Yeah,
here's your white-red representation. Here's your green-black
or like
representation.
Urtai in the Dominaria United. It was like, that didn't need to be Urtai. That could have been. Yeah,
he didn't need to be there.
Didn't need to
unless
be
he has gravity going forwards, in which case, fine, cool. We'll talk about that when it comes to it. But in the moment, it felt a bit like, remember this guy? It's like, yeah. Oh, we thought he was dead.
For me, the casual way that Reinhardt Suarez has brought these people in, I'm just like, cool, fine. They're here for a reason. The fact that they are free to planeswalk around as well makes sense. The fact that we know that Urza's Tower is kind of the HQ, so Jace will bounce in with the planeswalkers, be like, by the way, these guys are on our side, and then fuck off to what they're doing. I kind of liked that. I will tell you what my big failure was, just to get it out of the way, because I don't want to be down on this stories, or in fact the writing, because I think, again, that this is broadly an example of Magic at its absolute best, and I've got way more examples of the good than the bad. There is one line that I'm like, this is the reason why it can't be taken seriously, and why Magic and nerd culture in general, I'm going to get quite big here, I think has a problem with its own sense of humor. This is it. This is my big, spicy, hot take, right?
Hot take 2022. Let's go.
The line is, Wait, slow down, Joda said. Exactly how does one create ghosts? I mean, apart from the obvious way of, killing people. That joke, because it's a joke, it's Joda being jokey Joda. That is...
Let's not call him jokey Joda.
Hey, it's jokey Joda.
The JJ.
Yo, it's hey Arc JJ. Oh, we hate it. Hey. Anyway, that joke is like the result of meme culture. And what I mean by that is that if you look at that joke, exactly how does one create ghosts? I mean, apart from the obvious way of, killing people, the line of, killing people is not the punchline. That's not the punchline to what Joda said. The punchline is exactly how does one create ghosts? I mean, apart from the obvious way. And you can stop it there, and can trust your audience to go, I'm going to fill in the blanks with my brain. What does he mean by the obvious way? Oh, he means killing people. Very clever, JJ. Very clever. That's what should have happened, right? That's a joke, because there's
illusion.
That's expectation of an audience. That's filling in blanks for yourself. You see it. Comedians do it all the time. And I don't profess to be an expert on comedy. I am very much a fan of comedy, and I've heard people much better than me talk about it. And you want the audience to fill in the blanks, even on a throwaway line.
You don't
And
wink, nudge, nudge, and
then
tell
say
what
the
the wink,
joke,
wink,
right?
nudge, nudge is. Yeah,
That's exactly what
exactly.
they've done. They go, apart from the obvious way, ... of killing people, and you think because that's meant to be like, oh, you're killing people. What are you like, JJ? But that's
Oh, a
the joke's already
Joker.
done.
Yeah,
It
and
and
then
what
to
you could even
reiterate,
do to really spool it out is you could have him go, oh, except for the obvious way, and then have someone else like Chandra, for example, go, what, you mean killing people? Like, and then that would add a layer on, because either she doesn't get it and she's being an idiot, ha ha, or she does get it and she's being petulant, which is also funny in another way, right? And she's making
yeah.
fun of Joda. So, but the reason this bugged me so much is because it doesn't trust. It shows a real lack of trust in the audience when it comes to humor, because there's so much other heavy shit, both sad and tragic and violent and all the kind of big stuff that Suarez really does trust you with. But for some reason, the jokes have to be like, it's like a meme. We all understand the nuanced layers, but the nuanced layers make up. Memes are really interesting because they rely on a shared sense of time and
Interpretation.
interpretation that we all share.
Yeah,
But the joke is still it, because it's usually a picture as well, or whatever, or like
it's left up to the interpretation of
well,
the audience
it's
member, rather than just telling them what they should
well,
take away
it's
from it.
it's more like you and I both know what like a SpongeBob meme means in a context, but the very nature of it is like it's going, here's the joke. Do you know what I mean? And I think that nerd culture and Twitter culture and a lot of stuff these days, the joke is to be like, this is funny, right? And everyone goes, yeah, because we all understand why it's funny. Like, I don't want to go too deep into that, but I just feel like this is the
Yeah.
kind of joke you see over and over again in Magic writing. It's not just this author; it's the kind of thing again and again you see where
It's like they
people just
don't give
try.
faith to the audience understanding the thing and the
Yeah, the
context
humor is
already.
always really kind of childish and on the nose, and I
Yeah.
just that for me in a really wanky, really way. If they just cut that last line, it would have been flawless. But
Way
that
more
is like a
credible.
massive pothole of me going, oh yeah, they don't fucking give me any credit. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Do you know
This
what's
is
worse
just a
is
card game.
it's not just not giving credit to you slash the audience at large. It's not giving credit to Joda as a character, which is why I
Hmm.
feel like there's been like a general kickback against him. And I feel like in Dominaria, the original, I say the original set, as in the set that came out, where with Slim Voda and Historic and all that stuff. I can't remember what year it was. But Joda seemed to just be like an add-on, right? And even in the story, he wasn't
Mm.
anything more than Joyra's potential, past squeeze. Oh, he's thousands of years old in this other way, that 6 other people within the set or automatically gain immortality from.
Mm.
And I feel like the problem with Joda is that in some points in this story arc, like they do a really good job of presenting his length of life, and his presence throughout the eras and generations of history of the sets really well. And sometimes it just makes him sound like a bit of a goof, because as
Mm.
someone who's 3,000 years old, you wouldn't explain your own joke. You'd get to they've even said, like, like within these 5 stories, that he finds it difficult sometimes to like care about the individual, because he's seen so many individuals go through his, go pass by his attention.
Oh yeah, he's way beyond the worries
Yeah.
of like a mortal
So
life.
why
Yeah.
the fuck would he explain a basic joke, that he's probably I'm right no I'm 31, right? I've made some jokes about 17 times in my life, and maybe every now and again I get to a point where I've said a joke enough times that I have to then explain the joke, because I feel like I need to deliver it a little
Well,
harder.
it's like
You know,
you're saying a
I'm
meme to
sad and
someone, but they don't
pathetic.
understand the layers of it. So
Yeah.
you
And
forget
I'm
that this person
31.
doesn't
I'm not
understand.
3,100 years old. So why the fuck would he have to justify his joke to someone? Yeah, this is
Yeah.
what you mean. Where you say you take someone like Chandra, who's young and impulsive, weird, like red mage, and they're more likely to be the kind of person to call them out on the punchline, undermine it and stuff. But why would you have your, millennia years old, like, character who should have a lot more gravitas? And there's one thing to be said for, like, oh, how does he not have more magical ability? I'm like, cool, fine. Power scaling is its own drama, especially in something like Magic. It's in any science fiction / fantasy media. It's really difficult to have effective power scaling, because you constantly need there to be a bigger, badder. One Punch Man tries to do this really, really well, and even then they're going to write themselves into a corner. I don't really understand how One Punch Man can't eventually be stuck. But with someone like Joda, who's supposed to be super all in powerful, and they even did this with Teferi, of where they even mentioned in a random line, I can't remember what chapter it is, but it was like, I could levitate up there, but my wife taught me that sometimes putting one foot in front of the other is more important than using magic to solve your problems.
Yeah,
Like, great,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
You've just silenced a bunch of the masses complaining about how Teferi doesn't have the abilities he had before because you're recanonizing him to be a worse mage than he was
No.
before.
He's being a better person.
He's being a better person, sure. Yeah, that's how they justify it, sure. But someone like Jonah,
he's not being a worse. He's not being what Urza was. Urza,
yeah,
let
he's not
himself
being
become
lazy.
the ultimate mage. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
fair
then, so
enough.
that's it. I don't want to dwell on it too long. I'm just saying that is, and it's not. Again, it's not even that line. It makes it sound like I'm having a go at this author. I'm just saying that is the snapshot of me going.
It's indicative,
As an example,
right?
here, this is what we should stop fucking doing. And it might just
Yeah.
be because, as English people, we often get accused of the stereotype of having the incredibly dry wit, which is ridiculous because we have the fucking Carry On films in our history.
Yeah,
Ugh, whatever.
Really,
but do you know what I
really
mean?
base sometimes, boobs and stuff.
Boobs and entendre. But do you know what I mean? It's like, for anyone who doesn't know what the Carry On films are, please don't look them up. It's utter trash, and I'm embarrassed to have even mentioned it.
Yes,
but,
it was in a different time. Things were fine back then. You could be sexist and bigoted.
Again, as an English person, if we use the phrase "it was a different time" to justify half our shit, then it's going to be a very long podcast.
Our entire history is awful. Anyway, carry on.
So I'm just going to have that as the example of, like, going forward, this is what I mean when I say sometimes I think Magic doesn't take itself seriously enough, or maybe not serious in the right way. But, however, at the other end of the scale, we get passages such as this. And this is from, I think it's chapter 2. I didn't number these, but it's where Teferi is basically trying to talk to Elizabeth, who is grief-stricken and tired from her time on Capenna and has all the doubts of herself, and Teferi having a second thought as to whether he should be pushing people into what they're doing and just kind of having a little self-examination. And the passages, I'm going to read the whole thing. Teferi took his time with a response. It was a simple matter to say the truth was the truth. Isn't that what a great leader, a battle-hardened general would say? Isn't that what everyone needed him to be? Who was the true Teferi? Was it Teferi, Mage of Zalfir, who pledged to defend his home no matter what the cost? Was it Teferi, Master of Time, the elitist, nigh omnipotent planeswalker, who thought everyone should simply get in line and follow? Or was it Teferi, the disruptive student, who used cruel humour to obscure his own fears that no one would ever understand him, that no one would ever consider him a friend? Get out of your head, look with your eyes. Are you hungry? Teferi asked. Why can't it always be like this?
Right. Like, this is such a better
incredible
presentation of someone who's lived millennia than the whole, apart from when you kill them, whatever, like, it's such a better representation of timelessness, and I feel like sometimes I kind of, I guess it depends on, and it's an interesting thing, right? As an author, what gravity do you give to a cast of characters when half of them have millennia of experience? Do you need to make some of them more naive? Do you need to make some of them more worldly known? Do you need some of them to be the major, some of them to be the minor? What do you deal with when you've got 6 characters all stuck in a room and you're like, cool, right, so you're only writing this one chapter / one episode. Obviously difficult here because Reinhardt did the whole 5. But if, for example, you pick up a random Magic story and you've got all these characters, and if you know the Magic story a little bit, you're like, I've got 12,000 years of age in this room right now. How do I balance the major and the minor in this role? And I feel like Teferi, and we've said this for a while, we've said this across multiple sets and multiple, I guess it might even come to a year now. Teferi increasingly gets better and better representation as someone who is worldly and timely known, someone who has perspective on the individual as well as the grand. And what I think is the best thing about this little set is that it's given humanity to Teferi, where some people might say, like, oh, deference of, like, oh, he's just some random old dude who knows shit. It's like, no, he's very clearly flawed. He's very clearly checking himself on his flaws, and he's very clearly trying to communicate and better himself as an individual based on his flaws to other people, be them younger or older. He's trying to fix relationships with Khan. We did that in the Escape Room episode in Dominaria United, and now he's trying to do it back, trying to reconnect with other people. Like, it's a really clean way of representing a character who, from a card point of view, is a douche. No one likes playing against a fairy.
Yeah,
But any
it's so
story,
hard, isn't it? Yeah.
right? But as a story, as in terms of story, like you could bullshit the timey-wimey stuff really badly, and it doesn't seem to happen with Teferi. He just seems to be so well. It's such a well constructed character that the representation we see narratively from him always seems to be very fair, seems to be very objective, and yet you don't just see objectiveness because he's uncaring. You see objectivity because of his subjective point of view that he then takes out of himself. And it's those kind of circumstances that are really humbling and really easy to engage with.
Yeah. Do you know this might come across as quite unfair to people who like Chandra and Nissa, who are both very popular characters. But I think this is this is personal, and this might be why I don't gel with them as much, and why maybe someone like Arlen Cord and Teferi, these characters I gel with a bit more, because I do put them in the sort of same category. When it comes to them as mages and their powers in a fantasy setting, a lot of Chandra and Nissa's and other Planeswalkers with their kind of attitude towards their writing, it just sort of seems to be like Chandra's a fire mage, therefore she's really impulsive and rah, and then when she gets more impulsive and rah, her powers get more fiery and she explodes with a thing and she makes everything go on flame. And then Nissa, all of her powers are about, nature and nurture, and but the nature, she uses the nature to destroy things, and then all of her doubts and all of her kind of rage and everything gets put into, why can't I talk to the world soul? Oh,
one-dimensional solution. Yeah,
it's just it's like their personalities are there to serve the fact that they're these archetypal mages. This is just something I'm thinking of now. It sounds kind of bullshit as I say.
Well, I thought Jace does the same thing, right? But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, and then someone like Teferi or Arlen Cord, they have these powers. Like Arlen Cord is a werewolf. I don't know really what her mage powers are other than being a werewolf. Not all the Planeswalkers have like mage powers. But then Teferi is a chronomancer or a time mage. But their powers, although they do inform their personality and their personality gets fed into their powers in small ways, a lot of it is to do with them as people trying to wrangle with the pressures of having those powers. Teferi as a character, in that passage that I've just spoken about or just read off, that is a history of Teferi as a person and a character, who is someone who has the power of time manipulation and therefore basically is a god, because that's the most powerful thing you can have, is power over time, because time defeats everything else. So how does he as a person factor that into him as a human being? And Arlen Cord having to live her life in a church, how does she factor in that she is now a monster versus her as a devout angel worshipper and also loyal to her pack? They're not there to service sparkly magic. The sparkly magic is there to put them in a box for creativity as a character. And I think that's why, for me, that's why I drive more with those characters. Other people, I think, do enjoy the fact that people's powers are more manifested more emotionally to who they are. And I'm not trying to say actually that Chandra and Nissa don't have depth. Again, I say in this very story arc, I think Chandra showed a lot of depth, more depth than she's had in a long time. I just sometimes feel it's very easy to be like, Chandra go flame, and that's all she does. Maybe that's what it is.
That's an interesting point. So I guess I'm going to put a pin on the Chandra thing for a moment, just to state that. Do you reckon that the reason why you can find more depth and interest in these people is because the whole point is that they're not the mageness of them, the fact they're a wizard, a pyromancer, a chronomancer isn't the focus, because we can't relate to that kind of thing, because imagine yourself as a chronomancer or as a pyromancer, As a flame mage, I've always thought this when I'm writing headcanon or fan fiction and stuff, I've always thought being a flame mage is really fucking boring. In terms of a fantasy setting. But as a normal human being, controlling fire would be the most sick thing in the fucking world. That'd be crazy. That's crazy cool. But in a fantasy setting, having that as your only thing you could do, being like a lightning mage or a water mage, or anything like that, that's fairly base, That's not exactly super expressive. And if anything, it is going to define all of your attributes, because everything in media defines by elemental, qualities. If you're air, you tend to be far away and not very focused. If you're earth, you're super stubborn and unmovable. If you're fire, you're super passionate. If you're water, you're flexible. Blah 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 blah. And these are like stereotypes that have kind of permeated throughout media for generations. And I feel like the problem is that certain characters are written where they are human beings and they happen to have magical powers, whereas certain characters are written as this is the magical power and that defines the kind of human that they are.
Yeah, I think that's it for me.
And I feel that's the thing with Magic as a a universe that we have to kind of write within and build cards within, is that sometimes you're kind of shoehorned into what's the difference between Jaya and Chandra? They're both fire mages. Oh, Jaya's got specific fire quality. She can do like super like sniper flame magic, whereas Chandra can make an inferno that burns a Sky Eldrazi, as we've seen. So at that point you kind of like shoehorn yourself by not creating a quality character, but creating a quality ability, and then how does the character balance out beyond that? And Teferi, probably throughout his longevity, has a fantastic ability to kind of go beyond his chronomancy, because we know he can also do levitation, we know he can also do a few other abilities and stuff like that. Arlen as well, like, as you say, we don't know what her mage ability is per se, which actually gives her full autonomy on terms of her personality and the way that she translates into story arcs and things like that, because, cool, she's good with wolves. So that actually makes the personal struggle that she has and the way that she lives her life on her own plane, and then how she interacts with other planes, and the fact that she's a werewolf makes that way more interesting. The fact that, like, I go beast mode, I fight and bite things, which is the equivalent of, say, someone like Jace or Chandra, which is like, I'm mind mage, I flame mage, and maybe that's the problem they had with the Gatewatchers. They made this whole, oh, we've got a necromancer, we've got a battle mage, we've got a flame mage, we've got a nature mage, we've got a mind mage, and that's why no one really, like, could get on board with it, because no one is a mind mage or flame mage. No one's any of these things,
Yeah,
like the worst,
too archetypal.
the closest thing you could get is maybe like like the tactician aspect of Gideon, and they killed him off because he was boring as fuck. So maybe it's more interesting now that we've got these people that are nuanced, and this is why people probably speak very largely and grandiosely about like the old novels, is because they gave texture to people. They weren't just, Urza wasn't just an artificer. We're talking about, and I think we're going to come to this at some point soon, because I want to talk about this in the flavor picks as well, is that this is a time in the past of not magic people. Not everyone's just funneled into what's your craft, what's the magic that you do. Everyone's just human beings dealing with things in the same way that modern, nowadays, Earth human beings are dealing with things, of being more good with words or being more good with machines or whatever. That's actually way more easily relatable. Like Huatley, she's a poet. That's so much more accommodating to most people's minds than being like, I have affiliation with dinosaurs. Imagine if she was dinosaur mage. No one would care. So I feel like that has a big, big thing about, and especially now that we see these grand casts, how are their stereotypes communicated? Tyver, funny because doesn't wear a shirt. Cool. Wanderer can't stay on a plane for very long. Now, that doesn't actually say anything about her character, which makes her interesting, because then we might work out something about her character. But if you tell me, oh, Water Mage, or even someone like Cura, okay, Leviathan Mage, like there's very little to permeate beyond that. So I feel like this is why I think things like War of the Spark, and sometimes like maybe this might happen over the next year, where we have this March of the Machine, all will be one kind of arc, where we got all these random planeswalkers that are all involved in the same story arc. Is if all you are is a stereotype and nothing else of your character permeates beyond that, it's a lot harder to get on board with and understand and relate to and empathize with these people, as opposed to the same similar initial proto Gatewatch thing of where, oh, there are the 5 colors, 5 different styles of people, there were these 5 predominant, and so it was like the colours of Magic in general back in the day had a very defined point of view, and nowadays you can be a black mage and still be a good guy, and you can be a white mage and still be a bad person. The Magic's color identity has diversified, so Magic's character identity should also diversify. And I think this is why you don't like Chandra, because Chandra is the red mage. And Jaya, as much as she was a better interpretation of that red mage, we didn't get that in the modern setting, and then they killed her off, and now we're just stuck with just Chandra, So I feel like that's probably what's happening in terms of Teferi, is Teferi's managed to be such an interesting, textured blue mage from the get-go all the way through to now, and now his diversity is maybe even more expressed and more diversely understood than it was before, because they give a bit more breadth to him. And I think, I feel like it's sometimes with Nissa, I was like, oh, great, probably going to do something with ley lines, and that's boring up until the point of where she connects with Gaia, who's now sick of the shit with the Phyrexians, because she's already dealt with it once already. And that was a really lovely point in Chapter 5, where Nissa and Gaia are trying to find this communication, and Gaia's like, who the fuck are you? I've already dealt with this before. I don't care anymore. And Nissa's going like, no, but I know you've dealt with this before, but it's happening again. Like, please, can you not? I'm not even from your plane, I understood your plight, and this plight was spread beyond. And Gaia went, let me show you all the history of heart, all the history of hurt that I've dealt with, all the history of anguish and death that I've dealt with. And if you can accept that and understand that, which is Nissa did, and then gave a nice little rebuttal to, then the guy went, okay, I didn't expect someone to actually understand the difficulty I faced, because Titania and Argoth had to be the dueling grounds of Mishra and Urza back in the Brothers, the Brothers War culmination when the Silex triggered and was exploded. That was on Argoth, a living forest where Gaia was willing to give herself to Titania to be the incarnation on Dominaria of the World Soul, and it got, silexed, which is a pretty harsh thing to happen. And the fact that Nissa was able to kind of do that again with Ren, I mean, this is where, like, the past and the present are really well culminated, and I feel like that's one of the things they did really well. Reinhardt did really well with these 5 stories, is that it kind of gave a, like, if you look at the episodes and how we kind of do this is Teferi looking back at all the stuff that mattered back in the day, and it has present consequence, and you're like, cool, but you don't get the present consequence in the episodes. So now you get the chapters going, so these are all the current players that are doing the things right now, and every now and again we get a hint at why the past consequence matters to the present consequence. And that communication between Nissa and Gaia, I think, was really important for us to see, like, all of the history of Dominaria matters to the now. Like, all of the things that are happening before. This is now known as the second Phyrexian invasion. They were 4,000 years apart.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous to think. And we'll talk about this again next episode when we talk about flavor picks, because I want to talk about Gix a lot. But, like, the history of the Phyrexians' interaction with Dominaria is huge. And for the modern audience member, if you're not reading the stories, you're missing out on a lot because you're not going to understand it. But if you are just at least willing to read the modern stories and you haven't read the past stories, you'll at least understand that there is a history that has gravitas and a modern cast of characters that all have their own personal stake in the world. Again, maybe not in episode 5 where they just listed a bunch of random characters. Why the fuck is Nahiri here? I don't fucking know. I mean, no one knows.
Oh, yeah, she turned up as well.
Yeah, apparently, great, good. But, like, the actual interpersonal context of, like, those that were defending the tower. So we're talking about Nissa, Ren, Joda, Teferi, Sahili, Kaya, those kinds of characters that have recent relevance. And now that this recent relevance interacting with past relevance. And it's that interaction that is really nice. The fact that Chandra can mourn Jaya as much as Joda can isn't a mark against Jaya. It's a mark for her because she can unite, like, thousands of years of life together in the same random drink and a toast, And I feel like that's, between the episodes and the chapters, I feel like both of these things have been really communicated, like, very well. Like, we got a little hint of Teferi interacting, but now the modern context, when it's all like proto Gatewatch, which is what it kind of felt like a little bit at the end, it didn't really matter in the end because
no, I liked it. The Gatewatch isn't a bad concept. It's just it was very blandly done.
It was
but yeah, all of this I think is to say that this is incredible writing. I think Magic, the fact that again we've gotten like 2 novellas worth, which is, you could argue all of the side stories and all of the main stories in the past online fiction count as novella length, but these ones really felt like I was reading coherent books as opposed to individual episodes. And I'm not saying the side story structure, just to kind of talk about the structure of it, this is one of the first times that they've done side stories that are literally just like a continuation of a single narrative as opposed to like a life in the day. And we've always on this podcast, I think, said that we champion the life of the day storytelling, but ever since the Nikki Drayden Ravnica stories, right, which were infinitely better than anything else. No, sorry, obviously the Django Wexler chapters are obviously great, but better than the main narrative that we were presented with through
the big stories. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I would want to get rid of that style or that this one's better, but for what we're doing now, where we do have a lot of narrative and the fact that, this is a big moment, getting whatever I said it was, like 40,000 words or whatever I pegged it as last time, that's like a lot. And we've essentially read 2 books, 2 short books. If this was an Audible, this would be like 8 hours worth of listening, which is, for something where, so like in our recent podcast memory of us doing this for the past 2.5 years, we started going like, well, fuck, Magic Stories in a bit of a shithole, isn't it? And look how far
where has it been? And now it's here again. Yeah, and it's actually delivering, which is really, really nice. I just want to chat through some just very quick, like, little mention-y things that I spotted in the narratives, like little, like, oh fuck, they spoke about that. Well, that's interesting. Firstly, Ren was found by Teferi on the plane of Cride or Cride.
Cridhe, which had a clan tree that had showers of intense mana. I didn't know about this plane. I looked it up on the Magic Wiki, and it's only been mentioned in a 2008 article on the
Once.
Mothership
Yep.
once, which was just like explaining,
Deep
oh, here
cut.
are some other planes of the multiverse, which is really cool. Shout out to the Moon Silver Key, which is like a really integral part of the temporal anchor. And I really, really don't mean this as a diss to the Crimson Vow Midnight Hunt stories, because I really enjoyed them. It's well documented. I said it at the time. I completely forgot that the Moon Silver Key was a
Yeah,
thing.
it didn't need to be there, did it? Really? Like, it didn't matter in the
It
end.
was like the main thing of that story.
When you've got 6 MacGuffins, how can you make each
But
MacGuffin
I think
feel as
that's
relevant as the last one?
I'm choosing to believe that is a testament to the more interesting other shit going on in those stories, like
Sure.
Arlen Cord's journey and Soren's journey, right? That's better.
Which
so
were predominantly more important. Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
exactly. Little shout out to Adeliz, the character Adeliz, who's the Cinderwind. I can't remember. She's a uncommon.
She was a Cinderwind. Yeah, well done. Yeah.
Oh well,
exactly
yeah,
her.
nice one. She's a blue-red uncommon legendary from Dominaria 2018, and isn't mentioned in any other stories. But this it says, "Jorah, I've got to go," he said, standing up. "Give my love to Adeliz." I'm like, "Oh, sick!" So Jorah is talking to Joda, and he's like, "Oh, shout out to that other Gitu mage." It's like, "Cool, that's a nice little shout out, bring the world together." And finally, the thing that I little like, "Ooh, that's cool," thing that I spotted was, Khan did not speak, did not complain, while hooks and razors, the suture bishop's preferred exploratory appendages, prodded his mangled body. So we've had suture priests, and now they've got suture bishops. Like, they're really going like, Elish Norn's a Phyrexian Catholic Church.
I mean, it really is, though, isn't it? Do you know what's funny is we haven't spoken about that episode, because I was going to say one of these episodes is not like the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I could happily have ignored the 4 other episodes just for an episode of Tezzeret walking Khan back through the Mycosynth.
Yeah,
like
it was good
Lattice Layer. Like, that was a really cool, and I don't know, maybe we'll come back to it in retrospect. And I think we'll probably refer to this episode a lot when we start talking about One with the Machine, Obi-Wan and March of the Machine. Because it was very much, it felt like, okay, let's just make sure we give a little bit of a hint to, in the same way that we got the Urabrask Tezzeret story in New Capenna. I felt way more invested in that episode in particular, because it was like we've said this a few times, of like, I want to see point of view of the enemy. It makes their intentions more obvious. It makes their plights more obvious. It gives them more, I don't want to say the word humanity, but it gives them more texture, right? It gives them a positive and a negative. You can see why they're doing what they're doing. It's not just, we've got to fight this enemy, and this enemy is a douche and they're evil and we hate them, they're killing everything. But if you get an understanding of why they're doing what they're doing, it creates a greater circumstance of why are we supporting the good guys? Is there a good guy perspective? Like, maybe
I understand your point, but are you about to go?
No.
If we have a point of view of Phyrexia, we'll go like, do you know what? They've got a point.
No, but I'd rather have Elish Norn and know what her intentions are than just get Elish Norn the card and be like, cool, yeah, there's the bitch.
Yeah.
Let's kill her. I'd rather at least have I'd rather have her voice. And that one of the best stories we've had is where we saw Ashiok and Elish Norn interacting, because we saw Elish Norn fear Elspeth. Mm-hmm. And now we have a greater perspective on why Elspeth's important, because I felt a little bit like Elspeth was shoehorned into this story arc. I don't know why, but I think it's because she's always felt a little bit more detached. She was always connected with Ajani, but now Ajani's on the other side. It kind of felt like Elspeth was a little bit disjointed, and Teferi couldn't connect with her very well, and Joda couldn't connect very well with her, and it's almost like she's still dealing with herself coming back from the dead, and Ajani being completed, and all this stuff, and it kind of felt like there was a bit of a separation.
Like Elizabeth, we haven't spoken about Elizabeth, and obviously she was a massive part of this arc.
Yeah, well, episode 4 and 5, she was the POV, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting, but I can see what you're saying, because it's almost like we had her as the. I mean, obviously, this is like pre-pandemic magic now. If we're going by like real world timeline, she was the protag in Theros Beyond Death, and then she got New Capenna, and now she had these stories. She's not the protagonist of this arc at all, but the fact that she got these things of her coming off the back of that time, I kind of feel like Elspeth's got, if I had to be like, who's the protagonist of all Magic the Gathering? It's not Jace. It's not Chandra. I don't know if it's Teferi. I kind of
Oh,
feel
really?
like a lot.
I'd say it was Teferi.
Well,
That's
interesting.
interesting.
I sort of feel like the backdoor protagonist of Magic the Gathering is Elspeth Sorrell. She's everywhere.
See,
She knows
I would
everyone.
feel like that more if she was more willing to be on board with the general consensus plight.
I don't
right?
mind that though. I don't mind it. She's a knight.
This is why I
she does her
felt
own
disillusioned. This is why I felt disillusioned by episode 5 because they're like, "Oh, Luca's here," and you're like, "But why?" And you have no justification as to why. Tyler's here. It's like, yeah, but why? And a lot of the questions always comes down to, with the War of the Spark, they justified it by going, there was a planar beacon and every planeswalker in the multiverse got given a, hey, come here now.
Yeah,
and whether you're
lazy. It wasn't lazy. It wasn't
Whether
lazy.
it is a little. It's easy. It's not lazy.
Well, yeah, but
it's
it got
easy.
set up quite well in the Ixalan block.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna have a go.
And
at
I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it was an easy way to justify why so many people were involved in the same plane at once. R.I.P. Viashino, fucking Planeswalker, whatever. But with this one, I'm like, cool.
I was thinking a lot about him today, for a very different reason, but I was genuinely thinking about him today.
I have a big gripe with how Dominaria United didn't convey the planar invasion war thing very well. And now we're supposed to believe that planar invasion war thing is continuing. But also, all of the other planes are now aware of it, and all of the other planes are now getting involved in all preparing for the same invasion incursion. Did you not feel like that was lacking a little
I completely
bit?
disagree. This is the same point that we made literally 1 hour ago, where I said I like the fact that they're not making it this big, like, we have to work together thing of, like, we have to work together.
But they do! No. They're making Worldbreaker!
They're all choosing to work together because they are facing a threat. They haven't just
but what is the threat? The threat doesn't feel... Yes, but we know that. As an audience, we know that. But I don't feel on each individual play, they have the justification for it.
Because we've seen it.
We've seen it? They haven't! Why does Kaldheim care about Phyrexia? They've just dealt with the fucking Doomscar.
Teferi and Kaya have had... We've seen them having conversations and going, well, we're putting all the pieces together. Other planeswalkers around the multiverse have been doing the same thing, and then Jace, the fucking mind mage, is going around being like, by the way, everyone, wob, 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 wob. This is happening, wob, 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 wob.
But okay, right, if they justified it like that, fine, but I don't feel like enough of the planes have a personal stake enough to understand the gravitas. And the only reason I say that is because I don't feel like the threat to Dominaria has been conveyed well enough. I feel like at the end of Dominaria United, it felt like there was a one attack on the mana rig, and then after that was done, everything was fine-ish. I know it wasn't, but it wasn't really conveyed very well that it was fine. It wasn't fine-ish. And now we're supposed to be saying that everywhere around Dominaria is dealing with invasions and incursions and fights and everything, and also everywhere else in the multiverse is going to have to deal with the same potential threat in the very near future. This is why I felt like the whole, hey, by the way, Koth's alive, the Mirrans are mounting an assault, it's happening tomorrow. That's why I feel like that concise sentencing is doing a disservice to the gravitas of the Phyrexian threat, because suddenly all the different planes in the multiverse are all giving all their individual planeswalkers to go to Mirrodin / New Phyrexia to go and do the battle tomorrow, because that's when they're ready to do the united front. When it doesn't feel like even Dominaria was under immediate threat of its extinguishment.
But they're not really. They are sending a group to New Phyrexia, but they're also ensuring, because they know that the Phyrexians have the
will
Phyrexian
succeed
World Tree
at doing what they want to do.
Well, no, the Phyrexians have got the World Tree, whatever I can't remember what they called it. Realm Breaker, I think that's it.
Realm Breaker, yeah.
Realm Breaker. So they know that they're going to do this big multiverse
and we know as an audience it's going to happen. We can't help that.
They can talk to each other. They're planeswalkers. Look.
I don't know.
I genuinely love the fact that we're just disagreeing this much on the story, because it just goes to show that this is actually some of the best writing, because it's inspiring this kind of conversation. We're overrunning, and we've got another episode to record, and you only wanted this to be 45 minutes, and it's definitely not. So can I just end with one last thought? And it's a nice thought. Saheeli Rai.
We haven't mentioned her yet.
Sure. No, because I'm going to mention her now, and it's a little bit lewd. I don't know if Saheeli and Huatli have an open relationship, but I'm poly, and if Saheeli wants a boyfriend, I think I'm desperately in love with her. She is easily my favorite planeswalker ever now, honestly. I
Do you
think
think
Arlene
she's
Cord
a
might have
little
been
bit
ousted.
attracted to Kaya? Because Kaya's very not been specified either.
I mean,
right?
I don't really give a shit. I'm insanely attracted to
You want her
Saheeli.
yourself, I get it, yeah.
She's beautiful, she is beauty,
Yeah.
she's determined, she's
Her
talented.
episode was phenomenal. It did a really
Every
good job
artwork of
also
her is
backtracking.
honestly incredibly. She is. I mean, I don't want to be too base and laddish about it, but she's a very attractive lady. And yeah, all I'm saying is, I don't necessarily want to be a throuple because I think that might get a bit complicated, and I don't know if Watley's into it. But
Can you be down with dinosaurs?
I can be down with dinosaurs for Saheeli.
There we go, then. You're fine then.
What I'm saying, very respectfully, is I'm a very good partner. And I'm open for business is all I'm saying.
Cool.
I fucking love Saheeli. And I know, and also genuinely, on a slightly serious note, in terms of the writing, I'm not going to end it necessarily on my horny ass. I actually think they did Saheeli fucking brilliantly here.
Fantastically.
And I can't wait to see more adventures of Saheeli and Huatli.
We didn't get enough
Robo Dinosaur.
Yeah, we didn't get enough POV of her in Kaladesh. I feel like the only reason I say this very casually in the background is that she has like artificer powers. That's a very easy thing to complete.
Yes, and I agree. But caveat, her intention for those powers has in like
super
depth
pure
and motive, as opposed to her just being like, create a robot, fight. The way she does it.
Well, we want robo dinosaurs. We know it's going to happen eventually. They don't give us to us in a secret lair. They're failing in life, you know.
I just think, and also as yet another foil to Urza, which many of these characters are being portrayed as like trying not to be Urzas. Saheeli being one of the only people that didn't know Urza of this little clique of anti-Urzas, being like, I'm building things for beauty, which is something that Tornos failed at.
True. That was really good statement when she was making a nice little thing and Teferi went, oh, Urza would never have built it like that. And everyone in Reddit is saying like, oh, is everyone saying that Saheeli's better than Urza at Artifice? It's like, okay, Urza lived in an age of Artifice before Magic because Magic wasn't a thing, the third path and stuff. If you don't know about the third path, we'll talk about this next episode. Loran, Felden, they discovered fucking magic. Get off your high horse. Urza didn't know magic, bitches. Anyway, point being that he wouldn't have made some lovely, cute, squirrely thing. He would have made something that could kill people. So Healy wants lovely, cool, squirrely thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And is her talent greater or equal? Is it equal? Absolutely.
Well, she improves on the designs of the temporal anchor.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway,
right, we're getting off track.
All I'm saying is that for a character that I didn't really give a shit about in terms of like the narrative, because she didn't really have much, but is always a character I was like, do you know what? Saheeli seems pretty cool. To then get her in this story being like a real strong voice, and also again infinitely fanciable. And I genuinely between Saheeli and Tyvar, I was very horny in this story. Not gonna lie, and sincerely so. And also just being an incredibly well written, needed character in amongst a lot of dreary like we're all gonna die to Phyrexians. Thought she was cool. That's what I
feel modern cast in general, like we haven't spoken in depth about. It's weird, right? We spoke in grand terms about a lot of the story, but without specificity. Kaya did really well. Elspeth did really well. Nissa did really well. Everyone within this story did a really good job of conveying themselves as individualists. Also working within a collective, and then we'll see the big down point for me was right at the end where they just chucked a random load of other War of the Spark names at me, Luca, Nahiri, Kaito, Wanderer. Apparently the Wanderer's fixed her ability to stay in one place at one time. Who knows? We'll see how that translates into the next story, and always with a Magic story, retrospect is key. Not just how they're presenting them now, because Magic works in like a 2-year basis in terms of sets. I imagine story works a little bit in the same fashion. Let's see about how all of these seeds that have been planted germinate and grow over the next couple of sets, because it might be that they set a little something, like with Ashiok. Ashiok's been set for a long time, ever since Theros. Not done anything, really. Ashiok's not done anything of major consequence beyond that one cool story where, they went in and jib-baited Elish for funsies, which, great fucking, like, good job, buddy. So I feel like, let's see how all of these random names being thrown in at the end kind of affects the next couple of sets. But I think that the characters they gave specific credence and point of view focus on did a really good job of. And I'll be interested to see how they keep handling it in the future.
All right. If you disagree or agree with anything that we've just screamed at each other about the last hour,
come at us.
You can find us on Twitter at MTFlavouring. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal Twitter, for as long as Twitter lasts, is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is?
At the Fox and the Moon.
Will we create a Hive account? Will we go onto Instagram or Mastodon? Ooh, who knows? I don't know if any of it will exist. I'm kind of happy with the community that we have. And I also don't necessarily believe Twitter will implode, but this podcast will age very poorly with that. I might cut that. Yeah, let us know on any social media platforms that we may eventually get on. Also, hit me up with your opinions on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I'm
right, haven't downloaded it yet. I'm really scared. I left it specifically until payday. People are being shit about it.
You should be scared.
Have you bought it?
Yeah, I'm about 20 hours in.
Oh no, I can't miss a Pokemon game.
We will off air it, but
great.
Let's just say if Sword and Shield if Sword and Shield for me was 50% wicked, 50% maybe I'm done with Pokemon. This game is 30%. Wow, that's incredible, and 70%. Nah, this franchise is dead for me.
Did you play Pokemon Arceus, by the way, Legends Arceus?
No.
Oh, okay, that might, because Arceus for me was like 80%. Holy shit, yeah, and then 20%.
No, but all right, I'm not going to.
Good, right, that's fine.
Just defend my position on Arceus. From what I know of that game, all the stuff I love was present in that game, so it's not a diss on new style Pokemon.
Yeah, if anything, it's going to be worse for me because I had that, and then I'm going to go into Scarlet Violet, right? Well, no.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic for Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.